All right, why don't we go ahead and get started. First of all, good morning, everybody, and really thank you for being here. As you can see around the room, we have 6 of us. Charlie won't be joining us today. Councilmember Miranda, who is ill, and so Mariella Smith will be checking in with us shortly. That's what I understand online. She is not, and Catherine Starkey, with things in life come up, and she should be calling in and joining us that way as well. So there'll probably just be 6 of us in the room and 2 others participating a little differently. And but I really thank you for being leaders in the Tampa Bay area for our most precious resource. And I don't say that lightly. I really do believe that. And it's not lost on me what our residents have sacrificed this past year. Whether it's health-wise or jobs or whatever. Our region has been through a lot. But it's also not lost on me what you all have been through as leaders, as elected officials, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you. And I know you're not here. We don't do anything these days without some degree of risk. So you're here. It's an important place to be, I think, this morning. I really think we're in a good place today. I feel much better than I did 2 years ago. I feel much better than I did a year ago. I feel much better than I did a couple months ago. This organization continues to evolve. The staff is really excited and doing good work. We continue to improve, not that we need it improving, but build on a great relationship with SwiftMud in the last 3 months through our general manager and the outreach to that organization, just to let them know what we do, something that I think is extremely important. And I just want you to know that we're also reaching out to our member governments at the highest levels to ensure that our mission and their mission about delivering water to their residents are on the same page. And again, we have 6 partners. Heck, it's hard enough with one partner you're married to be on the same page all the time. And we're 6 of us gathered together trying to do our best to bring a most precious resource to our residents, not only today, not only in 5 years, but in 20 years and 25 years. And I think Tampa Bay Water has a unique opportunity to be a leader in that regards. So we drought-proof, we deliver water, we work on water quality, we work on points of connection. We squabble over this, we squabble over that, but we're still working together, and I think that's really important. And one of the things that St. Pete has issues, Pinellas County has issues, Hillsborough counties, Newport Richey, Pasco, we all have different challenges and issues in this same one water system. We can't ignore them. Okay, I mean, we all have different issues. We tend to look at water quality as a problem sometimes in Pinellas County, so we're having these water quality work that's going on to make sure that we're bringing good water quality. But Hillsborough County has growth issues on the south end, and getting water to there and high, at the right pressures is critically important. I mean, you can't ignore any of that. And then I would say that Hillsborough County and trying to figure out what to do with their reclaimed water. I mean, hello? Who's calling? Oh, looks like the coffee. Looks like, is that telling us that it's ready or that it's low? Oh, there's a phone behind it?
Magic touch cleaners.
Okay. Well. So I think as we go forward, and I think that's a great way to end my comments with a little levity. But as we go forward, I really do think we need to make sure that we're listening to each other, because I think some of the opportunities, some of the threats that are out there are kind of one and the same. We don't want Hillsborough's problems or Tampa's problems or challenges or Pinellas's problems or challenges to be an issue with the existence and the continued great service that Tampa Bay Water brings. So I really feel good about where we are, and I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to start the new year with a session together. And so before we get started, and because I know that we have one person in the audience who wanted to speak, I know we have one public comment, so I'm going to invite that person up right now, and he'll have 3 minutes to speak, and then we'll get started with the program today. Thank you. Yeah, we will, as soon as he's finished.
Hi, good morning. David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Thomas Jefferson references physics and geometry in his Religious Freedom Act. Geometry is also brought to light in Federalist Paper number 31. The progress of population and resource is calculated in Federalist Paper 84. Federalist Paper number 79 again clearly states that in order to control man's will, one must first control man's subsistence. Uniformly bankrupting the water supply from Article 1, Section 8 of this Constitution, as I see it, is the so-called naturalized objective in the 14th Amendment. As leaders, you have the obligation to tell the civilian population where you intend on bringing them in regards to the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and the establishment of despotism as it relates to the Declaration of Independence as enumerated from Article 1, Section 2 of this Constitution. As leaders, your role is to be shepherds of society and not trappers of mankind. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, and before we get started, we're going to face the flag and do the pledge. Ron, if you'll lead us in that pledge, thank you. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ron. Okay, it's all yours.
Okay. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm not too muffled in my mask. A lot's happened since we were together. Last September it was. We wish Council Member Miranda a quick recovery and hope the rest of you remain safe and healthy. Today's workshop is a continuation of the one we had in September, the third of the three that you asked us to conduct. At the last workshop, we asked you to articulate what was most important to you, to each member government. And today, our primary focus is a brainstorming exercise to generate ideas to satisfy those interests. Not just your own interests, but the interests of all the other member governments as well. So I hope you've had an opportunity to review the summary of the September 30th meeting. It's there as part of the materials that you have in front of you for you to refer to as we begin the brainstorming exercise. So just to go over the agenda, we're going to start, as usual, with a brief warm-up to continue the process of having you all get to know each other a little bit better in the hope that that will help you work more smoothly together as a board. Then staff felt it would be helpful for you all to have a brief reminder about the master water plan process. And Chuck Harden is going to give you a short presentation on that. Since we have a new board member, Commissioner Cohen, and we have other participants today, the utility directors from each of the member governments, Carlos is going to take a minute to go over the ground rules that we established at the first workshop. Then we'll turn to the brainstorming exercise. Brainstorming is often misunderstood and often not done correctly. It's actually a multi-part process. It starts with idea generation, and then you have some discussion and clarification of the ideas, and then finally put some priority on those ideas, which are most promising. And there are certain rules that we'll follow for idea generation, which I'll go over with you when we get to that point in the agenda. After brainstorming, we'll take a short break. And then when we come back, there'll be an opportunity for discussion and clarification of the ideas. After that, if you recall from the first workshop, we'll use sticky dots to put some priority on the ideas that are generated during the brainstorming session. Then we'll take a lunch break and then conclude summarizing the accomplishments of today and identifying next steps. So that's the plan for the agenda. Are there any questions? Okay. Could I ask the utility directors just to introduce themselves real quickly? George, you want to start?
George Cassidy, Hillsborough County Public Utilities.
Okay.
Mike Carballa, Pasco County Public Infrastructure.
Megan here.
John Palanchar, City of St. Petersburg Water Resources Department.
Are we expecting Megan Ross?
I haven't heard to the contrary, so I assume so.
And Chuck Weber, we heard was on the way. Is that right? From Tampa. Okay.
Do we have internet access in here?
Can you press your button?
Do we have internet access in here?
We have.
Is there a passcode?
HG, select the one that says H honors meeting, and the password is HGI, as in Golden Garden.
Thanks.
Okay. Carlos?
Good morning, and thank you, Annalee. We're going to do the warm-up exercises, get to know each other a little bit better. This is always an interesting situation because the whole purposes of all the facilitation, the two other meetings in this, is really to discuss issues. And the most important thing to learn from all of it is we have developed, what we brought you through is a process to resolve issues. We're dealing with one particular issue we'll talk about today on the reclaimed water. But this is, as this organization or any organization faces issues, what we're trying to do through the three facilitations is to show you a way that those issues can be handled in a way that is effective and come to a solution or resolving that issue. So the things that we talked about in terms of stating your interests and the other side's thinking of ideas to meet those interests, or the brainstorming that you do today. And that process, the way it's done, is a very important part of solving problems in an organization. So this warm-up exercise, it's interesting because we talk to members, and a lot of the members really enjoy this warm-up exercise, and some members are so-so about it. But it's something that I have learned in the collaborative work that I've done in the last 20 years, and most of my collaborative work deals with trial work, trying to solve cases that are in the environmental and land use cases in the court system. Usually, it takes about a day where we have the mediation. And what I have learned over time, that if I can get the parties to talk to each other from a personal standpoint and share personal stories, and talk to each other as human beings, which is probably a good lesson in our nation today for all of us to do that, all of a sudden, walls begin to fall apart and people start talking to each other a lot better. Given government in the sunshine and the limitations that puts on all elected officials, this is a really good opportunity to just kind of get to know each other as humans, and not as commissioners or board members, but as, you know, human beings, parents, sons, daughters, things of that are really important in life. So, having said that, you go through worksheet number 1, which is, you know, the same thing we did last time. Taking turns in 2 or 3 minutes each, share a story with the other members of the group about one of the following: a personal hero, or advice you would give to someone in the younger generation, lots of that, and then the biggest mistake you ever made and what you learned from it. We have a special today, if you can tie all 3 together into your story. That's never been done, but that would be interesting. But I need to start with someone, and I did alert the chairman that I would start with him. Chairman Eggers, and I'll probably go to the left. So Board Member Peters, you're probably going to be second, and I'll probably just go out this way and then come back around this way. Okay?
Okay. Well, since I am a sports nut, I love sports for a whole lot of reasons, and it seems like in this past year when we've lost the sports, it's been difficult, and when we've gotten them back, it's been something that we've been able to kind of distract ourselves from what's going on around us. So it's even kind of gotten to be a bigger deal. So without being too dramatic about it, I'll just focus on a personal hero. Really, I think about a person who, down to earth, who is really bigger than his job. So he has a job to do, but he's farther reaching than that. I think of a community leader that not only is important to his immediate community, but the greater community with the work that he does. He's a family man. He's a man of God, and he's a leader of young men in the academic sports world. So I think of 2 people. I'll just say 2. Thinking of Mike Krzyzewski and Tony Dungy. So they're kind of heroes on a more down-to-earth level, and not those worldwide leaders, but just people that I think that do a great job every day for the reasons that I said. Younger kids, I also I've learned to coach Little League and be an umpire in Little League, and so I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When you make a call for an safe out call at the base, you're supposed to pause and then read and then react. So I would tell young people, try not to be too reactive. In other words, try to pause a little bit, understand what's going on, get educated up, get learned, and read before you actually react. And it seems like a little bit more of that deliberative process would do all of younger people good, but probably a lot of us in politics as well. But nonetheless, it was about the younger generation. And the biggest mistake, I don't know, I've made a lot of those, was when I was giving my Newt Rockne speech to a bunch of kids before a really important game. And I was going on and on and on and on, and probably they were falling asleep. But a big osprey flew over top and did his job all over me. And of course, that broke up everybody. And so the mistake was just talking too long. I should have known I was going to go into politics with that. But and what's that? Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, just so talking too long of one of many times that I've done that. But anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I just have to mention something that you Chairman, when I was coaching Pee Wee football, I was giving my Newt Rockne speech And one of the players looked at me and said, Coach Alvarez, those are really nice tennis shoes.
It's like, after all of that.
After all of that work.
Yeah.
Board Member Peters?
Let's see, personal hero. There's a woman, she's 88 next week, I think. She took me under her wing and when I was about, I don't know, in my 30s, actually. Because, you're never too old to have a mentor or a teacher. And she really helped me get more involved in the community, and I just trust and value her opinion and more than anybody I've ever met. And I make a point of taking her to dinner every other week so that I never lose touch with her. And she's just a wonderful woman. Doesn't matter how old she gets. She's amazing and wise and family to me. The advice I would give to the next generation, younger generation, would be two. Never be afraid to love. And the second would be don't watch the news. And I think I think we've made so many mistakes in our life that the blessing is that if we can learn a lesson, because sometimes people don't learn a lesson and they seem to repeat it. But just an easy one is I was dumb enough to pick up my phone when I was driving, and that was a big mistake. And I learned a big lesson on that one. It was expensive and painful, so that would be it.
Thank you. Let me just add, and I really appreciate that you have actually, both of you, captured all three topics. Don't feel like you have to do all three topics. If you just want to stick on one topic, that's fine too. But I think that was very nicely done. Board Member Oak.
Okay. Before I get started, I'd like to say one thing. I'd like to welcome everybody to Pasco County, Premier Pasco County, because I'm now the chairman of the board of Pasco County and vice chairman of Tampa Bay Water. But I certainly appreciate all the people here and all the input you put into Tampa Bay Water that helps all of us. And Tampa Bay Water for Pasco County has been great for us. It really has. And sharing of ideas is a great thing to do. But you talk about someone that means a lot in your life, and I keep thinking, but actually the person I think of the most as mentoring me or making me think about what I should be doing in the future was a very close friend. He was a guy that I could tell anything to, and even if he told me probably to jump off the cliff, I probably would have, but then I wouldn't necessarily listen to him all the way. But he's a guy that I cherish his friendship forever, because he fought cancer for 5 years and passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. But I've never been able to replace that person. And it's hard, those friendships you lose. I mean, if you think about it, the older you get, how many real close friends do you have? Mm-hmm. And you can count them on less than one hand, probably. And when you have a person that you care a lot about and that, it means a lot when you lose that person. But I didn't always do what he advised me to do. So I made my mistakes, even though he was a very good friend and would tell me yay or nay on something. Didn't matter what it was. So it was very important. And I think that's the same thing with the folks we deal with in our staff and all, that they voice their opinion, whether they think it's my opinion or not. They voice their opinion to me, and I'm able to decipher that and use it the best way I can. And without that, and like this board, if you don't hear from each and every one of us, then you don't get that, and you need that. You could be totally opposite than me on an issue, but hearing your opinion makes me think, well, wait a minute, maybe that is a good way to go. And so you can share those ideas, and from the end of it, you come out very good. The result is very good for everybody. So those are very important. And kids, I always tell kids to work hard, do their best. They they think they can just study till graduate from high school and it's over, but you study and work your entire life. So most people think I didn't go very far, but I've been a long way around. But I'm actually 3 blocks from where I grew up in my office in Dade City. So it makes you sound like, well, you didn't go very far. So, but I have a lot of great friendships and a lot of folks that I've dealt with throughout the years that mean a lot to me and pretty well have guided me to be who I am. So I'm all about doing business in a very good way and a way that customer service is what we're all about. No matter what your job is, no matter what you do, customer service is what you need to be focused on, because if you can't deal with your folks that you work with and you work for, then you have issues. So I think this group brings that together because we're all from a different area. So, yeah, that's enough, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Board Member Cohen, and I will add, I meant to say this in the beginning, congratulations to Tampa Bay, obviously, getting the Bucks here. I mean,
we all get to share that.
What a wonderful gift, really. And what a wonderful game that was. Although I'm a Pack fan.
Awesome.
But anyway.
Well, yeah, thank you. It really is very exciting. The idea that we're going to have be in the Super Bowl when we're hosting the Super Bowl is really a novelty. It's too bad that this is the year that it's happening, but nonetheless, it's very exciting. You know, a lot of younger people do ask me for advice a lot, and it's usually something related to running for office, or they're entertaining the idea of a career in politics or government. And I think that there are really 2 things that I tell everybody. And the first is that whatever you're going to do, you really should do something that you love, because you're going to be spending an awful lot of time doing it. And if you love it, it's just so much easier than if you find it to be drudgery. I've run 4 campaigns in the last 10 years, and I do not love being a candidate. I don't love campaigns, and I don't really like politics all that much. But I love the work of serving in government, and it makes it totally worth it to me to do the other stuff in order to actually sit here and deal with the types of issues that we have to confront. When I was on city council, the thing that I'm the most proud of is the stormwater initiative that I championed for my district and for the city. And when you're doing the kind of work that you really feel passionately about and you feel strongly about, it doesn't feel like work. And if it feels like work, I think that you ought to be shifting your focus and trying to find something that doesn't feel like work, because there's nothing like getting lost in something that is just way bigger than yourself and much more important than your own interests. The second thing that I tell people is that it's very, very important to keep your word. And if you can't keep your word, you should tell people that you can't keep it and why you can't keep it. That you should never blindside somebody by doing something against something that you've committed to do. And if you can't make a commitment to somebody, don't make it. Don't tell them, I can't commit to you on whatever it is you're asking for. I think we all know as government officials, you're constantly being asked to vote yes, vote no, make a decision. And you have to be very careful about what type of expectations you give people, because I think that the one thing I've learned over the years is that, and I luckily didn't have to learn this lesson the hard way, I learned it the easy way, which is why watching some other people make the mistake, that blindsiding somebody by going back on your word to them is the quickest way to make an enemy. And that if you want to make friends, people can respect your disagreeing with them as long as you're open and honest about it and you don't go back on your word.
Yeah. Good advice. Board Member Rice?
Ms. Smith.
I'm sorry. I already had you over here. Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. I have had so many personal heroes and mentors. Like Ms. Peterson said, there are women who have been very special to me. But as I thought about this question, I kept returning to the lessons I've learned from people in a sport. Maybe it's because we're mindful of sports these days. And a sport that's very special to me. My family, my husband has been involved a long time, 20 years, in wheelchair rugby. My husband was for many years a referee and a technical commission president in that sport, and it took us to many international tournaments as we volunteered. I volunteered to keep score on the clock and run the clock and keep score. And one of the most thrilling episodes in my life was keeping score for the gold medal game in the Sydney Paralympics of wheelchair rugby in a stadium packed to standing room only. It held 10,000 people, and more were waiting outside the door screaming as the United States went to victory against Australia. It was just heart-pounding, heart-stopping, but in our career with wheelchair rugby, that is for quadriplegic people who are too low functioning to play wheelchair basketball. This sport was developed for them. I saw a lot of acts of heroism and team spirit. And one that sticks out in my mind was at an international tournament when an athlete, and these are athletes who have ended up in a wheelchair sport, although they are very athletes in their own right. And this young man was Dutch, and he developed a whole new way of pushing his wheelchair with his thumbs instead of his whole hands, and was able to go really fast down the basketball court, which is where they play wheelchair rugby. And this new method of pushing his wheelchair just made him a star and helped his team propel his team to victory, and they just ran over all the other teams in this tournament. And so they won, his team won that tournament. He was undoubtedly the most valuable player. And the very next day, he went out and bought the kind of gloves, a special kind of glove he had found that enabled him to do this. And he bought the gloves for everybody, not just on his team, but for everybody on all the other teams that they were still competing against internationally. And he led seminars teaching the other athletes, his competitors, how to push their wheelchairs this way, in this method, with these gloves. And everybody does it this way now. But that's a lesson in real heroism, real team spirit that I think is moving today to me in our partisan world, our partisan world, where that we can learn from each other even when we're on different teams, and that we can teach each other and help each other, even though we're on different teams. And in doing that, we raise the whole level of sport. We raise the whole level of government. We raise the whole level of civility and working together so that we can all enjoy a higher level of whatever it is we're engaged in. And so that's the story I share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Smith. Board Rice.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Darden Rice from the city of St. Petersburg. And I was drawn to the question about what kind of advice to give the younger generation. And like Commissioner Cohen said, I do have a lot of younger people, especially ones who are interested in politics, come to me. And I have many younger people in my family who get the unsolicited advice. And so here's my solicited and unsolicited advice. And this relates a lot to, I think, what we're seeing on the national level. But I think it's really important to remember what civility is and why it's important. And I think sometimes there's a thought that civility is about just having good manners or not wanting to offend someone, or maybe even there's a thought that it means being superficial in social situations. But I think it's really important to really appreciate and understand what civility means, especially in environments like this, professional or personal, that are diverse, and we're dealing with a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And civility is the glue that holds us together, and it's rooted in respect. And it helps provide an understanding and ground rules so that we can discuss, disagree, debate, but still have relationships and still have patience and empathy for looking past those few things that people at first present about themselves and getting to know and see a larger person, because human beings are much more than partisan leanings or the job they do, and are far more interesting. And we learn a lot more about ourselves and other people when we have that interest in them. And I think it's really important to really respect and promote civility. It's an old-fashioned value, and maybe we forgot why it is so important, but I think recently we've seen, boy, it really is nice when we have a lot of people involved that have that as part of their code.
Thank you. I tell you, you get inspired listening to all of you. Really wonderful. Board Member Marlowe.
3 personal heroes. 2 were on the interview team at University of Florida when I applied for graduate school. They saw something in me that I didn't at the time. And they had 20 seats in the program I was applying for. I was admitted as number 21. The other hero is a national hero. Only met him once, but Gerald R. Ford. He had this silly idea that you do what's right, even if it's not popular. He pardoned Richard Nixon. And at the time, I and a lot of other people thought that was absolutely the most horrendous thing that he could have done. But time has shown that he actually made the right decision because it helped heal our country. Advice that I would give to somebody in the younger generation, I would quote some of the words from a American sage by the name of William Joel. I once believed in causes too. I had my pointless point of view, but life went on no matter who was wrong or right. And they need to chill out. Biggest mistake I've ever made, I've made a bunch. So, don't know. Possibly blaming Jerry Ford for the swine flu shot I got while I was in graduate school. And then went decades before I finally got another flu shot. But I've made a bunch, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick before we
sure.
continue, a couple of utility directors have come in. We went around and introduced ourselves, so if you weren't here when we did that, please go ahead and do that now, and go ahead.
I'm Chuck Weber at the City of Tampa Water Department.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi, Megan Ross. I'm with Pinellas County.
Welcome, Megan. And then just again, real quickly, Mariella, thank you for being here. Really great to have you listening in and being participant. As we probably said, Councilmember Miranda is home battling his illness, and we just wanted him to know that our thoughts and prayers are with him and family. And Catherine Starkey, Commissioner Starkey, is on the plane on her way back from Arizona, listening to us this morning. Can you believe that? Anyway, she's listening to us this morning, but she can't participate. And if she can't stand it, she may go to the restroom on the plane and weigh in. But otherwise, she's just going to be a listening participant unless she tells me otherwise.
She's on.
Oh, are you there? Are you?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Did you want to say, we'll let you, I'll back away and let you say anything you would like to say. I know you don't have a lot of latitude, but go ahead.
I don't, and they're about to shut the gate and tell us to turn off the phone. So, yeah, I'm out here because my daughter had come out here a couple weeks ago for a bachelorette party and got sick. So she was all by herself, and so I came out to make sure she had everything she needed. I didn't stay with her. I'll just say real quick, my mentor was my grandmother. She was raised super wealthy in Manila, and during the war, they lost everything. They were eating grass soup, and she fed a lot of people with her leaf and grass soup. And she ended up moving to America, and she was very grateful to the Americans. I want to say that, even though they lost everything. But she moved to America, and in her 50s in Miami, became a very successful businesswoman who did a lot for her community. And I just admired her so much, and I think a lot of my philosophies about work and community came from my grandmother, who died way too young. She died at 61, so she made a big impact in the 10 years she was in Miami, and running a business in a man's world in a community where she knew no one. Just a very inspiring woman. So that was my mentor.
Thank you, Commissioner Starkey. Appreciate your participating, and we'll just check in with you occasionally, and hopefully you can contribute some more. Great to have you this morning. Back to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. She's actually on a plane doing this? This is amazing.
Apparently.
Wonderful what technology has allowed us to do. Okay, thank you for that. Like I said, it's extremely uplifting. I so enjoy it whenever I hear these stories, and everybody really has really what I have found, if you listen to people, everybody has an incredible personal history that you can learn from. Thank you for that. Our next step is going to be a presentation by Chuck Harden on the master water plan process as used by Tampa Bay Water. Some of you are familiar with that. Some of you may not be as familiar, and we can always learn a little bit more. But this is very relevant to our discussion today about reclaimed water. And staff and your facilitators thought that this would be helpful in when we do the brainstorming session, for you to at least have heard this, for everybody jointly to have heard this, so that you can draw from it whatever you wish to draw. But it's an important concept once we get into the brainstorming session. So, Darden?
Thank you very much, and good morning. If you'll look in your packets, there is some slides that I'm going to walk through on the master water planning. And today I wanted to provide you some information on our planning and project vetting process. The board will be discussing some important issues today, including possibly project ideas using reclaimed water as a source. And I'm very hopeful this information will be helpful to you as you consider policy and process related decisions today. Tampa Bay Water has the unequivocal obligation to meet quality water needs for our member governments, with some limited exceptions to exclusivity. The master water plan is also a requirement in our governing documents. It's a process for identifying projects for implementation and planning for future needs. We have successfully used this process since the 1990s. The long-term master water plan is a 20-year plan, and it is updated every 5 years. It's aimed at providing an ongoing, reliable water supply for the region. It includes a capital improvement program. It reviews existing and projected regulations, as well as future demands and possibly new projects to meet those demands. Potential water supply projects go through a planning, evaluation, and an analysis process. We were trying to build the right projects at the right time to ensure that the supplies meet the demands when they are needed and where they are needed. Here's how it works. Over the years, we've gathered more than 300 project concepts, anything from using water from the springs in the Gulf of Mexico to actually bringing down icebergs for fresh water. These concepts were offered up from various groups, including the Water Management District, environmental groups, planning agencies, and, of course, the general public. These projects were coarsely screened and ranked to provide us a shorter list for further evaluations. We then took that shorter list and ranked them using board-approved criteria. The criteria included project reliability, cost, environmental considerations, public opinion, and others. After that, we came up with an even shorter ranked list, and we send these projects through the feasibility studies. Currently, we have 3 projects approved by the board in December of 2018 that are in this stage. The next step for these 3 projects includes completing the feasibility studies, recommendations to our board, and then the board will be selecting a future water supply project or projects. Then the process begins all over again. We have considered reclaimed water as a source since the very first master water plan, and we will continue to in each planning process. Approximately 18% of the 300 project concepts propose using reclaimed water as a source. This idea is not new, but it has gained new life over the past several years as our members and utilities across the region and state are looking for new and better ways to use this water source. Our approach is science-driven project selection. We also take into consideration other factors such as public opinion. This leads to an apples-to-apples comparison of projects so you can make an informed decision on which projects to build. You'll be able to compare yields, capital cost, O&M cost, and cost per thousands and permittability. The process has worked for over 20 years. The big question for policymakers is, what do we do when a project concept comes to us and it's out of the master water plan cycle, or it's a member-proposed project? There are several options for dealing with these projects. Option 1 is regionalizing the project. We did this with the Tampa Water Resource Recovery Project and the Downstream Augmentation Project in past years. These projects propose using reclaimed water from the city of Tampa. They were evaluated regionally, which means that Tampa Bay Water would acquire the water use permits and build the treatment and transmission facilities. Option 2 is a proposed project could be held until the next master water plan cycle begins. And then option 3, if possible, we could speed up the feasibility study to catch up with the other project concepts. There may be other options as well. And at this point, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide the overview of the process that we already have in place. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chuck? Councilmember Race.
Thank you for the presentation, Chuck. With the options for policy consideration, I was wondering if you would comment on your thoughts about, other thoughts about the process in terms of recognizing that some projects would actually require an amendment to the interlocal agreement?
Yes, there is, in the master water supply agreement and the interlocal agreement, there is some clauses in there that discuss that, where if a member would like to do something that would need changes to those documents, they would have to get the other member governments to sign off on that, approve that at each of the city council or the Board of County Commissioners individually, separate from the Tampa Bay Water board meeting. Tampa Bay Water is not a party to the interlocal agreement, so they'd have to get individually the other members to agree to that for any of these changes. They would propose them, they would present them, and they would get those approved.
Okay. And then I also, I think number 2 and number 3 are compelling, especially number 2. I wanted to just address kind of the reality of what we're dealing with right now, and that we just terminated the employment of the general manager. We're looking for a new one. And I know Ms. Ketty gave a presentation at our last board meeting that highlighted some upcoming retirements of also some of our top officers. And it seems like right now, Tampa Bay Water really focusing on taking care of Tampa Bay Water is very important. I recall that when we got kind of pulled away, or when we started kind of getting pulled into looking at TAP, and when we asked staff to compute the amount of time that they had spent on TAP, the answer was 4,432 hours. So because of the potential time involvement for getting pulled aside to other projects, when we have so many priorities to deal with right now, I guess my comment is that I would lean more towards 2 than number 3, that the boards should maybe look at, holding off or having a moratorium on discussing new projects until we get some of our personnel issues sorted away.
Okay, let me mention that if some of these ideas come up in the brainstorming session, then we have an opportunity to, in brainstorming, as you'll see when I go over the rules, that we're not going to criticize anybody's ideas. We're not going to evaluate them in the first stage. It's at the second stage that we get an opportunity to say, what are the implications of that? So and I think your comments are very relevant to that second stage, assuming these kind of ideas are coming up in the brainstorming.
Yep.
Thank you, and I hear that, and I hear the nuance, and I really appreciate that. I also don't want to run down a bunch of rabbit holes either. Yeah. So it's a balance of staying rooted in reality, and as we debate possibilities.
Yeah.
Again, I think your comment is, we're going to get into that discussion in a little bit. I think that the reality of today, and I think one of the comments that staff has agreed with in terms of that review that we had, the audit that we had, was that there's a real need for strategic planning. And I think that might redefine some of the things that we are currently doing. We may do them better, or we may do them differently. And again, those are conversations we're going to have about, do we have the right people? There's something in there about elevating IT in the organization. Well, there might be another position that we need to think about that is relevant to long-term planning and membership liaison work. I mean, again, he does it. All of our members, all of our officers do that, but there is the argument that things need to be done in the context of, well, we can't let other things wait either. So there may be some parallel paths that we have to take, and there's a time and a place for all of that work. I just want to make sure that we are open to embracing each of our individual problems, and then collectively deciding how we're going to deal with it as an organization. But to ignore it, I think, is wrong, and to blindly go down a path every time something comes up is wrong. So we have to collectively work through that. But I think we have to be aware of each other's issues so that we respond to our constituents, which is our member government. So thank you. Go ahead.
And just what you just said, Mr. Chairman, think about remember when I was talking about interests, and everybody needed to state their interest, and then everybody having to try to see how that interest can be met. is really what you said, is everybody has to consider each other's interests and seeing how collectively we can meet each other's interests. So it all works, within that framework too.
In a subtle way, threats or opportunities can be threats, or threats can be opportunities. And I really believe in this regional model that's been created for utilities and delivering. So to me, it's all about preserving what we have in the right context. So thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the ground rules. Just to remind everybody, and I know our new board member may have not seen these. These ground rules were developed by the group, and they're pretty much self-explanatory. I'll just read them. And so far, through both of our previous meetings and this meeting, everybody adheres to them so well that, but it's still worth mentioning. Number 1, be open-minded. Don't dismiss any idea out of hand. 2, keep comments and questions to the point. 3, when necessary, agree to disagree. 4, avoid personal attacks. 5, respect time limits. 6, be careful of body language. 7, don't interrupt. 8, help each other understand the views of members. 9, listen for what people don't say. That's my favorite. I had never heard that said before. Whoever created that, mentioned that at first, really rung a bell in my brain. 10, include background information to inform the discussion. 11, respect the ground rules. And 12, use icebreakers to share personal information. So those are our ground rules. And like I said, you guys have been following those really well throughout the process. Really?
Okay, so now we're going to talk about brainstorming. Chuck, since Councilmember Miranda is with us, can you bring your chair to be at the table for this part of the discussion? Turn to worksheet number 2. So the brainstorming exercise we're going to do in teams. So you all have your utility directors sitting behind you. I think the way it would work best is for you to just turn when we start this exercise. Is Newport Richie's utility director here? Supposed to be, but not. Okay. So, Mayor Marlowe, you'll be on your own, but you'll be fine. And I want you all to work together. So Commissioner Peters and Commissioner Eggers will work with your utility director, Ms. Ross, to generate ideas to address the issues. I want you to refer to the September 30th meeting summary. Where those interests were articulated. And as I said earlier, what we're trying to do here is come up with ideas to address the interests that were articulated in that meeting. And just to kind of get your thinking started, I looked to see if there were some common themes in what came out of that workshop, and it seemed to me that these are the common themes. 1, Tampa Bay Water continues to exist and continues to be effective as a regional agency, and particularly from Pasco County's perspective, to continue the recovery of the environment in Pasco County. Another theme was Tampa Bay Water has to be able to plan. If some member governments are doing projects with reclaimed water, there has to be enough information sharing so Tampa Bay Water can meet its obligation to plan for the needs of the region and for each member government. Another theme identified as people want that resource of reclaimed water to be used, that it shouldn't go to waste. A fourth theme was that we kind of need to pool the resources to make the best use of reclaimed water. We want, however we do reclaimed water, to be fair to each member government. We want to always keep costs low. And then the last thing I identified was we want to make sure that Tampa Bay Water is responsive to meeting all members' needs. And we had particularly the needs of South Hillsborough highlighted in our discussion at the last meeting. But you have it in front of you. Take a few minutes to think about what those interests are and how you might address them. The way the brainstorming is going to work, you'll have time to list some ideas working with your other board member and or the utility director from your member government. One of you needs to be the person to be the spokesperson for your team and share when I go around the room and get your ideas. I'll record them, and then they'll be posted, and we'll have an opportunity for further discussion and then some prioritization. So, rules of brainstorming. I'm going to ask for one idea from one person at a time.
In our small groups.
Yes.
Okay.
Once you've worked together as a group and come up with a list, then I'm going to go around the table. And then I will ask for one idea from one person at a time. I don't want you to self-censor. If you think the idea is kind of crazy, maybe a little silly, put it down anyway. Don't duplicate what other people have said. We want to keep the pace going, kind of lively. We're not, as I said, going to comment or evaluate or criticize anybody's ideas at this stage. We'll have opportunity to comment after this list is compiled. And then I'll just go around the table as many times as necessary to get everybody's ideas up on the flip charts. Okay, are we clear? Okay, for Commissioner Smith, you guys need to be tied together by phone so you can record her ideas. Okay, all right. Any questions about how to do this? Okay, start.
How much time are you going to give us?
So you'll be conferring with yourself, I guess.
How much time roughly?
Annalee, how much time do you want? 10 minutes?
I would say 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. And remember, one idea from one person at a time. And from Hillsborough, Commissioner Smith, you want to give me? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we were talking about setting the context and understanding the process and where we're at right now, rather than getting yet into specific projects, understanding that the question that I think from our perspective we need to look at is laying out some steps, short-term and long-term, maybe even before that, understanding, discussing each member government's very different situation in terms of needs and investments that we have in our water systems, and having that understanding, and then getting into the short-term steps, having some agreement about an order of procedures and discussing the short-term steps first before the longer-term questions. Short-term would include for us coming to an agreement on the value of the credits that from our SHARP project, where we're using reclaimed water in a way that augments or can augment the Tampa Bay Water supply system. And so coming to an agreement on what the value of those credits should be is kind of low-hanging fruit, easy or first step compared to longer-term questions about, what we might, other water source projects that we can do there. Commissioner Cohen, did I capture our discussion, you think?
I think so. I think that's our first major issue.
Okay, so the need to lay out short-term and long-term steps in a process and make sure everybody has a good understanding of what each member government's situation is.
And also, as a short-term issue, the value of the credit.
Yes, okay. Commissioner Oakley.
Yes, I want you to hear from.
Get your.
Commissioner, your mic.
Yeah.
Mike Cabela's going to give you ours. He has a little different perspective because I look at it in a sense that I've been here, but I like to hear it from the user, actual user and
Okay.
developer of that water. So
All right,
I'll let
Mike, what's your first idea?
So we agree with number one there for sure. We just kind of called it telling our stories better. There needs to be, seem like we understand a lot of what's going on in Tampa and Hillsborough. We have our challenges in Pasco. We probably don't project that enough or talk about that. So obviously telling our stories better. We kind of summarized up, Commissioner Oakley, we discussed transparency, and maybe a more deliberate attempt at transparency. And that's across the board. That could be everything from sharing data and information on what we've got. The environment's very important to us up in Pasco County. Let me share with you what we're doing, but we understand that there's other challenges elsewhere. So, that transparency in a very deliberate manner, we think would be very appropriate.
Okay. So kind of similar to what was said here in that there's a need to understand people's situations better.
Yeah.
But specifically.
So we've actually heard the story of the South Hillsborough and their water pressure issues and things like that. So we're aware of that. But then we don't tell our story enough to people be aware of our story. And we deal with more of testing water. And of course, we're doing infrastructure and things because of our growth. So our story's a little different than theirs, but we also care about their issues. So we all want to work together to get, different issues covered in different counties. And it's just a better way of working together. So you got transparency, no problems worse than others. We all got a different kind of problem. So we need to work toward those. Some of our problems are like organic matter and the testing of the new chemicals they're talking about in the future that Tampa Bay Water is starting to look at also.
And if I could add just some additional transparency with how we interact with Tampa Bay Water as well. If we're formulating agreements or we're doing things with Tampa Bay Water, we think that those should be pretty transparent organizationally.
Okay, Pinellas.
Well, first of all, I want to go back and say we agree that we think Tampa Bay Water's in a good place, but we need to do a better job of defining the issues and finding common ground. So I think to the point of understanding that's been mentioned in number one, we kind of agree with that. I think Pasco did as well. Ours touched a little bit on, I'm just going to try to pull two or three things together here, and one is a kind of a greater awareness of Swift Mud strategic plan, emerging technologies, strategic challenges, and future rule changes that are being developed. So for us, it's really, our number one thing is there's a lot going on right now, and we're a player in that world, and we just need to be more aware of what's going on. And it might, from the outside in, might give us a better sense of where we're heading, where we're needing to head as an organization to really bring value to our member governments. We do a lot of inside-out stuff by listening to our member governments. We need to do a better job of that too, but this is more awareness from what's going on at those, at the state level, DEP, Swift Mud. There's some really impactful things that we need to be keenly aware of.
Right. What's the context?
Yep.
Yes.
Awareness and context is probably,
Okay.
that was the one issue that kind of went through this one that they mentioned, and this was our second one, but.
Okay, so I think I missed one thing. You said Swift Mud strategic plan, technology.
Emerging issues and emerging contaminants and new technology.
And future rule changes. Did I get all?
Yeah, kind of all that.
Yeah.
That one idea kind of brought together 2 or 3 of our ideas. So the first one we had was the one that Hillsborough mentioned first, and then the second one we had was that one that we just talked about.
Okay, Mayor.
Yeah, I've got 2 that probably are 2 sides of the same coin, so I'm going to try to put them together.
Okay.
In watching what we've done over the last couple of years, it appears that we may want to shorten the time frame for our master water supply review, but at the same time lengthen the time horizon that we're looking at when we do those reviews. Basically, we don't want to get caught flat-footed like what seems to have happened down in South Hillsborough.
Okay. St. Petersburg.
This is a great list so far, so it's not leaving me with a whole lot, but we did want to say that over the last couple of years and even the last few months, it's been enormously beneficial to learn. Like, for example, Pasco County has some great projects, very impactful and very affordable, and it was really eye-opening to hear and learn more about what Pasco's doing. And it's also important to really imagine, walk in the shoes of what's happening in Hillsborough County and this unbridled growth in South Hillsborough and the challenges of delivering water to that part of their county, and to listen to the city of Tampa's challenges and clear some discontent with Tampa Bay Water. So I think, I don't want to repeat, but definitely each member government should have a robust reclaimed water system, and whether that is for conservation or for disposal, that's very important. I think when a reclaimed water project becomes a potable reuse or indirect or direct potable reuse project, I think that's something that Tampa Bay Water should take the lead on, because now we're talking about a water supply project. And that's the foundational purpose for Tampa Bay Water, which I feel like I've heard correctly, that member governments don't want to infringe on that foundational purpose and that regionality of Tampa Bay Water.
Okay? Tampa.
Yeah, I agree. Tampa agrees. The list is a good list to start with. Certainly, understanding the individual needs and investments of each member government is an important first step. I would agree with that. You know, as far as from our perspective, you know, as we move forward with projects or considerations, looking for ways to partner with Tampa Bay Water and other member governments, for that matter, is good. We should head in that direction. And the projects that we take on, even if they don't rise to a project that Tampa Bay Water does, should have regional benefit.
So the ones where the partnership is happening should be a project that has regional benefit, is what
Well,
you're saying.
even a project that a member government takes on themselves, you can act locally and have a regional effect. If you're able to satisfy the needs of your own utility in a way that doesn't draw on the resources of the region, that has regional benefit.
Okay, back to Hillsborough. Commissioner Smith, did you have another one? Another idea to share?
No, at this point, I would, personally, I would say I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing from other people speaking. That last point, especially that whatever a member government can do, it can benefit the region if we're able to find new ways of using water and reusing water that can actually be a benefit, not just to each one of us, but to the region. Commissioner Cohen, you want to take a turn at this?
Yeah, you know, there was something that the city of Tampa just said that I'm not sure was captured, and I want to just point it out again, and that was the issue of everyone understanding each other's needs and investments. Because I think in both cases, they're all different. And if we can understand where everyone is coming from and where everybody is going, we can all, I think, have a much better chance of being on the same boat, I would say, instead of being. Yeah, the main thing also that we had wanted to talk about separating out short and long-term issues from one another. That it may be helpful as we move forward to actually, I mean, short, medium, and long-term issues, because our South County issue is really, from my short study of it, something of a medium-term issue. And it may be easier for us to find common ground if we have more than one paradigm that we're looking through.
Okay, to separate out.
Well, I'm mediating between the two. As I wrote down, they had a long-term, and George, you might want to jump in, but the longer-term issue was the issue of using reclaimed water for self-supply at some point. They didn't talk about how to bridge that, they just wanted to have that as a future discussion.
Okay.
Is that correct, Commissioner?
So the perspective is that reclaimed water being used for potable.
That question, I mean, it's come up, I mean, it's obviously on everyone's mind as something that we may agree or disagree on, but at some point we have to talk about it. And it probably belongs in the long-term category.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't limit that conversation to reclaim. I would put the conversation to be all water, whether it be stormwater, gray water, reclaimed water, is all water. So I wouldn't limit it to just that one area.
Okay. All right. Pasco. Mike?
Sure, and so along the lines of some of the other things that we've discussed here, as a group, this is a very powerful group, and regionally we should be in lockstep going forward with the legislature and maybe perhaps even setting water policy at the state level. So it's something that we should band together on for our common interest.
Okay. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, some folks have touched on short-term, midterm, long-term, and going back to our original comment, which was kind of finding common ground so we can define what that means actually. So their short-term may be our midterm or vice versa. So if we need some, again, I don't think there's any more, the awareness issue I think touched on that. I mean, we just need to be aware of each other's issues, but really pin down some definitions. And I think it's going to be really important. So I think somebody touched on partnering, and I think that is absolutely, totally agree with that. I think some of the comments were we need to partner, think about it from the standpoint if we do something individually that helps the region, that's not a bad thing. And I think the thinking can be turned a little bit if we're careful and think more about true partnering. Chuck mentioned partnering not only with Tampa Bay Water, but also with all the other member governments. You're not the only one that are dealing with what to do with reclaimed water. Okay, we're, I mean, just in our conversation here, we're dumping 20 million gallons a day on average. Your guys are 50, I think, or something like that. We got a lot too. So, Hillsborough's got stuff too. We all have that common thread, and so I think somebody said we got to come up with some kind of a common value for that product. But I mean, if you build one master RO plant, that was my, just throw it off the wall idea that we all send our reclaimed water to. Now you can send some to your Sulphur Springs, kind of use that piece to keep the Sulphur Springs from coming into the river, that leaking salination process. But we could send our water to one place and have another water supply project. Maybe not the next one, but maybe it's the second one down the road where we all purchase the product. Tampa Bay Water purchased that product from us, and we produce a new type of water treatment, treated waters that is either at some point in 10, 15 years is received by the public as potable water because it's potable reuse, but in the meantime is used for other things where we have to treat water. Maybe we can get rid of that water out into the Gulf if it's treated at a higher level. I don't know what those rules are going to be. So for me, it's really thinking about it from the perspective of, individually, we could all do stuff and justify it in some way that helps the region. But if we think about it a little differently, what can we do as a region that solves each of our problems individually? I think we start to get in the same rowboat and we start communicating better. To the comments from Pasco, we start being more transparent. We start being, look, we've got a bigger problem than you do, but we have the same problems. I mean, we're all trying to figure out what to do with our reclaimed water, and so that's a major issue. So I think partnering is critical, but how we view that partnering, I think that makes a big difference. So
Okay.
that to me is the other.
So you're just throwing out a possibility, an example of a partnership effort.
Yeah.
Could be something like a central treatment plant
Yeah.
that takes reclaimed water from more than one
Yeah.
member government.
Yeah, And I think that approach kind of goes more to like a strategic approach versus a project approach. It's like, projects are the things that just kind of fall out. Sometimes we seem to be, to Councilmember Rice's comment earlier, we seem to be project-driven sometimes, and somebody has an idea, and we chase down that one, and then we chase down another one, and meanwhile, 2 years have gone by, and more of that compatible, this good conversation about how we can really, really help each other, we've lost some opportunities. And it doesn't mean we're lost 2 years, because we're certainly still, we're still looking at that next water supply project. We've got 3 on the table that we're looking at. But we need to be looking at that next water supply project. And it's not just mitigation, that's another one that's out there that we're looking at. But there may be that third one that we just talked about, that RO project. Maybe that's an master RO project. And somebody told me that, I guess our desal plan is an RO plan. I mean, of some degree. So those are things that we, just looking at it a little differently, instead of project-driven, strategic-driven, and partner-driven in a different sense. I think we can think of it differently. So I don't know. It's a lot of mumbo-jumbo stuff, but I mean, you kind of tried to capture it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mayor Marlowe.
Yeah, actually, my other item ties right back into what Commissioner Edgars and Peters were mentioning, which is one of the things that I think we ought to look at as Tampa Bay Water and as the member governments is figuring out how we can consolidate the storage of both stormwater and reclaimed water. The problem, of course, being particularly with stormwater is it comes in batches. And we don't quite know what to do with it to get rid of it when suddenly we've got a lot of it. And then other times we don't have so much. But if we had some way of storing it perhaps in coordination with some of our regular water plants that are providing potable water, it might provide that source for being able to utilize that water less expensively than it will be to use seawater when we run out of groundwater and surface water in the coming decades.
Okay. Tampa? I mean, St.
I really like what Chair Eggers mentioned about, being more in tune with how the region can in turn actually help specific member government issues. And I think that's important, but I think that to do that, we probably need to think out and talk a little bit more about how Tampa Bay Water can be more responsive to member governments' questions and concerns. Because there's something going on, either real or perceived, that that we need to make improvements in that area.
So, do you have something in mind?
Well, I guess I'm thinking more of like communication and trust issues, because I can think of lots of things that I think where Tampa Bay Water has been more responsive, but maybe as a board, as a group, we just need to be more aware, more in tune of what all member governments want.
Okay. So that was kind of covered with Hillsborough's first point, and I guess what I'm looking for is maybe some specific suggestions about how to be.
Well, can I just add something to your thought there? I mean, I know, if you don't mind, because we're not supposed to interrupt. No, I was just thinking about, we've been talking about taking inventory, and we have got a lot of really smart people at Tampa Bay Water right now working the way they work. And in some ways, maybe a particular group needs to be deeper with more people directed at, because we have people that are working on midterm and long-term projects right now. So we do have an element of our organization that's forward-thinking. We have another element that's operational, and they're doing it today. So we have these elements in place. So maybe it's just about kind of, again, doing that strategic planning session for our organization to see how do we elevate positions or elevate issues and think about it differently so that we can be a little bit even better and more responsive to our perceived or real shortcomings by our member governments. Maybe we really don't have any shortcomings. We just need to rethink how we do it and present it, because we've got some really great people here. And, you know, they look to us, this board, as leaders and figuring out how to better position us to be responsive to City of Tampa, to be responsive to Hillsborough County, Pasco, I mean, we've got it. So I just think sometimes it's, you know, bringing IT up to the director's level, bringing a strategic planner to the director's level to make sure that we have outside communication and inside we are responding to that. I mean,
Okay.
so excuse me for being so long there, Councilmember Rice.
That was very welcome, thank you, and we're on the same page, so thank you. That was a helpful, and that was getting at my concerns, was that, for example, when it comes to knowing what the projections are, projected population growth, projected water needs, we have a lot of people at Tampa Bay Water who have been working on this. And so we need to uplift that. It needs to be more transparent. It's the type of thing that really needs to be at the forefront of a board member's mind. It shouldn't be something that's like tucked away in an agenda the size of a telephone book, you know, that we have to go digging for. It should be pretty foundational knowledge that helps shape our understanding and strategic decisions as a regional board.
Okay, so we're looking for ways to make sure that those key issues are elevated, brought to your attention. Okay, Tampa. Nothing else? Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Cohen, back to you all.
I just thought that what Councilwoman Rice said was really great about simplifying the complicated. We get so much data and information, and it's so important that we elevate the important data points to a place where we can easily all be looking at the same information. And when you get a book the size of a phone book, you don't know where, you know, not everything is of the same level of importance. And I think that's always very helpful.
And if I may, this is Commissioner Smith.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yes, we're listening, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I agree with Commissioner Eggers very much. In so many areas of government, we need to keep pulling back to a strategic plan guiding us rather than a project by project approach. And then the project should come out of that. Also agree that it would be helpful, you know, and possibly part of that strategic plan would be some of the data that Councilman Rice and Commissioner Cohen were referring to. Personally, back in June, when we were first given one presentation in a several hours long meeting that included the slide of the supply and demand in South County and the pinch points of where we are in a little bit of trouble before the supply projects come online, and how our county's growth might play into that if there's more demand than that supply. I mean, that stood out to me, and you've heard me pull that out again at our last meeting. But those visual kind of graphs, so that we can really grok clearly the position that we're talking about, understanding that each of our member governments are in, that would help provide the context for all of us to understand each other's position, our needs, and beyond that, similarly, some background on where we are each at technologically and with our investments in our, say, wastewater treatment. We're actually in Hillsborough County, by the way, treating wastewater to drinking water standards before we discharge into the bay. But as far as, the concrete steps that to me are coming out of today's discussion, and I think the brainstorming, hearing Commissioner Eggers talk about, if we're going to talk, when we talk about reclaimed water, let's throw open the door for possibilities of regional treatments and RO treatments or whatever. But that all will include discussions of what then are the value of the reclaimed water that would be contributed to any system, whether it's sharp or a regional use or a local use. So, I think coming to an understanding, hashing out what the credits of the reclaimed water being used in sharp are worth to Tampa Bay Water is a concrete first step along the way to those the larger themes and longer term steps that are coming out today.
Okay. Mike?
I think it goes back to the same thing, we're telling our story. Today's the first day I realized Pinellas was pumping 20 million gallons into the bay. I didn't realize it. It might have come by me sometime or other, but I didn't realize it. I've always known about Tampa and them putting 50 million gallons a day in there of the reclaimed water. The idea of actually us talking about those ideas to maybe combine those water resources for everybody and somehow issue credits for water by putting that together helps the region in tow. That may be the thing we look at out in the future. It's long term, I think, but I think it's something we're going to come to well after I'm gone. I think that's a big source, but somehow we need to work together. So we need that transparency to know those issues. Just like the issue of Hillsborough County and South Hillsborough County. It concerns me they didn't have water pressure here not too long ago. When did that come up that we needed to project that extra water line or water lines to put that water into South Hillsborough? When did that come up? Did we not pay attention to it? Did we not really hear what was coming? Because that project, which we're in the process of trying to do, is behind, I think. Maybe we should have been looking at it earlier. But I think we look at a lot of things for the future, but it seems like that was missed. In my book, it does. We should have been there with that water at the right time, and as a region. So to help one of our regional members, I think we need to be helping each other. So, anything to add, Mike?
No, I just think everything that's been said, especially revolving around strategy, is really good. We're out of cheap water, and I think it's important to have a strategic approach to it rather than a piecemeal project approach. It's got my brain thinking about a whole bunch of different things that we've got going on in Pasco. We've got stormwater impoundment projects that we're looking at. Are we even considering it from a drinking water perspective? No, we're not, but maybe we should. And so at the risk of rehashing everything that's been said, I would say that strategy is definitely top on the list there. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I think we've kind of some of the things that we were thinking about, everybody's pretty much touched on them. And I mean, I think we've got some really common challenges, not only immediately. Hillsborough County has some issues, and we collectively should take responsibility for that problem, even though we could point fingers all over the place. We could point fingers at us, could point fingers at Hillsborough. It doesn't matter. The issue is that we are we as a body responsible for getting water to our residents. Really, our responsibility is to get to the member governments. Mm-hmm. But the mentality almost needs to be that we need to get water to our residents. And so what can we do to help each of those member governments do that? I mean, to the extent that we can't do everybody's job. Everybody has to do their own thing, but just the thinking process about it. And I took it kind of like, Commissioner Oakley said. I was watching those graphs, and when the water runs, when the curves here and we touch, it's like it made me nervous, and it makes me nervous and uncomfortable that we're not delivering. Again, is it a problem from Tampa Bay Water, a problem from Hillsborough? It doesn't matter. We didn't solve a water delivery issue as a team. And to me, we need to be as a team here, and ultimately, it's going to be their job to take care of things on their side, and our job to take on that point of connection. I get it, but if we're thinking together, that means we're trying to come up with solutions together. And I know that goes on. Thankfully, our utility directors and our folks at Tampa Bay Water do talk a lot, which is very refreshing, because if they were having the problems that we seem to have at the board meeting, sometimes I'd be more worried. But they're doing good work together. So if we just need to give a little more strategic direction, I think this is good stuff. This is great stuff today, I think. So thank you. I don't have anything else additional.
Mayor Martin?
One last thing. I know a lot of these comments seem to be keeping in mind supply and quantity. But as we go forward, we also need to keep water quality issues of concern from the regional perspective as well.
And Commissioner Rice, that was, we kind of captured that in our first thought. I probably didn't say it right, but yeah, I think that's critical. Whatever that is, whether it's an RO plant or whatever it is, water quality is really a big concern of ours in Pinellas County. We want to make sure we get a lot of well water, and that has different kinds of issues that we need to make sure that we're getting good water quality and all that kind of stuff. So I agree with that statement.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that as well. Tampa Bay Water has had a water quality group, and they meet, if not monthly, every other month. And they've been working on the water quality report. And one of the things that they've identified as a primary concern is total organic carbon. The members of that group have also discussed the detention time in the transmission system as being a factor for trihalomethanes and other disinfection byproducts. So as we move forward, I would agree with Councilmember Rice. We need to keep that in mind. And that is a function of a centralized plant, is where you can have a long distribution or transmission system. But that doesn't mean that Tampa Bay Water couldn't consider multiple sites strategically located to minimize detention time. Just another idea.
Yep, thank you. That's good.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to take a short break. You guys did great with this part of the exercise. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to put some priority on these ideas. So I think we have, let's see where we are time-wise. So let's take, we're running a little bit behind, but I think we'll be able to catch up. So let's take a 15-minute break. 11:30, yes. So what we have now is an opportunity to clarify what you see up here. If you've thought of something since we took the break, we can add. But in order to do the next step, which is to put some priority on these ideas, I want to make sure everybody's comfortable that they understand what's being proposed and that we've captured it accurately. Commissioner Smith? How do I make sure she's back?
So I haven't really, I've kind of forgotten to check in with Commissioner Starkey, so I don't even know if she's in the air flying someplace. I don't know where she is right now, so. Yeah, so I don't know. We probably have lost her, but I know Commissioner Smith is certainly going to get back with us here shortly, so have you texted her? Okay. I think this is just an important part to have as many of us at the table. Okay. Yeah, I just, and, you know, as we broke a second ago, I was kind of thinking about all the conversation we have today, and I think there's, you know, we touched on vision, whether it's short-term, mid-term, long-term. We touched on that a lot. We touched on awareness of issues around us, not even within Tampa Bay Water, but at the state level and Swift Mud and all of those things, and be aware of each other's issues too. So awareness, multiple different directions, technologies and emerging, you know, issues that we have in terms of pollution. And then that trust piece, that trust, building trust among each other, between each other. And you know, yeah, I think most of that is being willing to let go a little bit, and it's not easy. I'm looking at utility directors around this room here, and their job is to make sure that residents get water. I mean, that's their job. If they don't do their job, guess what? They'll find another utility director to do that job. And so we've got to make sure that we're good partners with those utility directors. I mean, they have to have ultimate confidence in us on a short term, right? You got to get water to your folks this weekend and next week. And so, and then obviously that other piece of midterm and long term and who plays what role. So I think trust is a big, big deal on many levels, and building that and being accountable too. You got to own your own faults, because we all have them. Tampa Bay Water has them, Pinellas County, we have our faults, and everybody has their faults. So, and then ultimately at the end of it all, we can do all of it, but it costs money. So there's an implementation phase at the very end of this that's a reality check for all of us. But it's going to be less expensive if we do it one time versus 6 times. And somewhere in between, maybe. Chuck mentioned maybe we don't do it with just one, maybe we have 2. But it's not 6 RO plants, it's, you know, whatever. So I think some of that is embedded in most of what we talked about. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? You want to share what?
Yeah, so let me I took a shot, the same thing you did, Mr. Chairman, just to see, okay, how do you?
Having trouble hearing you, Carlos.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
He's not turned on.
You can hear me? Thank you. So I took a shot at kind of looking at this and saying, okay, what are the themes that I see? And so here's what I see. That reclaimed water is a very important resource. That just seems obvious from the discussion today and what's been put up there. That timely transparency, sharing of data, and understanding member governments' conditions and issues are a key interest for everyone. That communication to board members needs to be more straightforward and understandable. We talked about the big telephone book. That's another theme, that communication needs to be timely, but it also needs to be very straightforward and understandable. That this reclaimed water issue's got to have a long, medium, and short-term planning. That is crucial. In relation to that you need a strategic approach rather than a project-by-project approach, but that's captured really in the long, medium term. Other factors also need to be considered, such things as environmental issues need to be considered, which is, of course, being done now, but those need to be considered as far as this particular issue. And outside factors, such as legislative initiatives, also need to be considered on a year-to-year basis. I'll stop there, but those are the kind of the broad themes that I see captured with a lot of the comments there.
I think one of the other sort of critical observations that we wanted to share is it seems like there's broad agreement. We don't have people on different pages on this list, it seems like to me. Yes.
Just asking a point of clarification, because I think in my group, and then I think I heard Commissioner Peters say the short, medium, and long term was all water concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Was it not just reclaimed, if that was correct?
Oh, yeah. And I didn't mean it to, just because we were talking more about reclaimed water, but you're absolutely right.
Elephant in the room when we have these conversations, we need to address that item, but there are other little baby elephants too, I guess.
Right. Well, I'll say this, because Annalee and I were talking about it earlier, is there benefit for, member governments on a yearly basis to report on reclaimed water projects? This is what we're planning short-term, long-term, and midterm, so that Tampa Bay Water is aware of it, and then, of course, the discussions can be had about those projects. But should there be a reporting so that's kept up with as you go along?
So that was one of Commissioner Starkey's points at the last workshop, that Tampa Bay Water has this obligation to plan. If each member government is going off and doing their own thing, that puts Tampa Bay Water in a poor position to plan. And she was saying she thought that would be a manageable issue, but an issue nevertheless. Commissioner Coleman.
So I don't know if we're at the point of throwing out more ideas, and I don't know if this has ever been tried before, but if we have 6 meetings a year, that would provide 1 meeting each for every member government to do a presentation to update everybody on sort of a comprehensive view of what they're doing, and allow people to ask questions, and maybe yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, somebody snookered you in to taking this job, because now we're meeting 12 times this year, and they may have told you 6, but now it's 12, and it's a great idea, Commissioner Cohn, and that's what we started last year. Our utility, in fact, some people reached out to us and said the utility directors need more direct access to these board members, and so we started last year. And then we went into COVID, and we tried to give that update from each of our organizations about critical issues. But to your point, maybe we tell them this year we want to hear from each member government about reclaimed water projects that they're doing or that they'd like to be done, or something along the lines.
And also maybe, if the city of St. Petersburg is doing something really creative, maybe we want to hear about it for the first time, and it might be the perfect solution for something that's on Commissioner Smith's mind, or something that, I'm thinking about.
It's a great idea.
I don't know,
It's a good idea. Yeah, a good idea. We have great utility directors that are doing good stuff. That we just thought it was a good idea for them to share what each member government was doing, a little bit about informational about their system and some of the challenges that they were each facing. And we tried it this year. I think we can be a little bit more direct in what we'd like to hear from them, because, and then they can say whatever they want to tell us too, but we also might hear some more on this reclaimed issue, you know, what we're doing, what things we're doing great, and we have some of the same problems. It's nice to hear that and hear good ideas from each other. Go ahead, sorry.
No? Anybody else have a question for clarification or want to add? Okay. Let's use our sticky dots. I'm going to do for Councilman Miranda. And here's where I want you to use them. It's what I...
On these things?
Nope, we're just going to have board do this.
Just
You
shush
can
and listen.
consult with your utility director on what the priorities are. You want to take two?
All right, so we're to, tell me what we're doing.
Okay. A reminder. Sometimes we have, when we do this activity, we have what's called a herding effect. And people they hold back and see which ones other people are putting their sticky dots on, and they kind of gravitate toward those. So to prevent that, what I want you to do is look and write the number of the idea on the dot. And then when I tell you, everybody's going to post at the same time, okay?
Well,
So-
you are sneaky good.
So out of the 16, you're basically asking us to pick the top 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I don't, sometimes people say, can I put 2 dots on one? No. Pick your top 5. You can get up and go read them get close. And if you can't read my handwriting, I apologize. Ask me. I'll help interpret.
You have preference?
I can't really read.
Yeah, I was going to take pictures and then read them. thoughts?
I just put basically, I thought the transparency one was really good. Two, I put three, which was, we had talked about, Commissioner Ayers about this with my, basically, I think it was more of a general comment, outside context of what's going on, you know, with state.
So you had 2 and 3.
2, 3, 11 was kind of on the same line, have the strategic, do things strategically, not project by project. 15 was water quality. I thought that was a really good point. And then 10 was, I don't know if I wrote it down. It was the idea on the centralized facility.
Some of that was,
Kind of like, the difference between everyone doing things individually as opposed to doing it collectively. Oh, that was a good one too, yeah. The one that I had was 10, the centralized plant. Yeah.
Anybody need more time?
kind of
Different issues, yeah. One has more to do with stormwater. Yeah.
Well, this is both. It's both. How to consolidate the storage.
Yeah.
Which is essential. It's definitely not essential, but
It's a big part of it.
Commissioner Peters, you ready?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead and post. You guys get yours.
Can't take racers with us, huh? All right.
I appreciate it. I got about half of it. I got 3 out of your 5.
Well, I thought you said something else.
Most of them.
Okay. Just glancing that need to lay out some steps and increase the understanding of each member government situation. Got a lot of votes. We all want more transparency. That got a lot of votes. We need to understand the context, be more aware of things like SwiftMud strategic plan and future rule changes and so on. Taking a strategic approach rather than a project approach. Don't lose track of water quality and simplify, improve communication to the board to elevate key issues. Okay? Well, that looks like good work to me. We're going to have a lunch break. And please feel free to continue conversations about what we have done so far over lunch. And then we'll come back and wrap up. It is now noon. So take 30 minutes for lunch, and we'll wrap up maybe a few minutes early.
Okay, ready to begin? Hearing yes. First of all, want to thank everybody for hanging in there on really a very difficult situation in terms of having the way we've had to hold these meetings. Really the wonderful work that your staff did to set this up so that it's very workable and made us as facilitators feel comfortable, and hopefully everybody else in the room. But we want to thank everybody for your cooperation in doing that. So remember that we're going to summarize what happened today in our summary of the facilitation, and it'll be just like the other two. There'll be a summary, and this will be captured. Annalee does a tremendous job on all of that. And so as you go back and look at what happened here, there is, I'm mentioned in this last item, the summary of the accomplishments. The accomplishments are, one, it's just getting to know, the board members getting to know each other better through some of the exercises that we did. Secondly, is really understanding this issue of reclaimed water as a potable water source and the issues that each of the members have, and the interests that the members have, and obviously some of the brainstorming solutions or processes, as it turns out, that the members feels are important going forward. And that's a very important part of the process. So knowing each other better, getting a better feel about this issue than it was, hard to believe, but it was over, when Annalee and I got involved, this has been over a year ago. We were supposed to finish it about 7 or 8 months ago. But everybody's gotten a better feel for that issue. And then to remember, as far as things have been accomplished, and I cannot emphasize this enough, this is a framework for solving issues. This is a difficult issue, obviously, the reclaimed water issue, but this is also a framework for any issue that comes into the future. And I'm not saying, Annalee and I need to be involved, just for you yourselves, how to approach an issue and how to go about dealing with that issue instead of, for example, just dealing with each other's positions and not getting anywhere. But this is hopefully giving you some ideas on framework, and that you can go from there, evolve from that, as to tackle future issues that this organization will have, because that's just the way the nature of government. You're going to have these issues going forward. There is here an action item. We're not going to have an action item. This is the last meeting. But if I did have one action item for you, and I suggest this strongly, go back and then read once Annalee and I provide the summaries, the summary for the last meeting, reread the summaries and read them together. because that will emphasize what I've just said about a framework to resolving issues and things like that. When you read them together, you see where we began and where we end up. Annalee, any?
I guess the only thing I would add is we have in that first workshop maybe the start of your strategic planning process when we did the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I know that's something that you, Commissioner Eggers, would like to move forward on. So hopefully that kind of begins to lay the foundation of that effort. And it builds, now that you have a better understanding of the issues and know each other a little better, I think that will facilitate the strategic planning process going forward.
Okay, and now I think Chairman Eggers, you wanted to add a few comments to all of that.
Well, first of all, thank you for guiding us through a couple of workshops now. They are, I think, they've been very productive. In some ways, you know, you want to rush things. Some of us do, and I think this has been a good process to go through. I mean, if you think back to when we had our last workshop, it was between two meetings where we were in the discussions about the general manager's position. It was a very difficult time, but it's kind of a rough time for us to be talking strategic issues when we were in the middle of so much. But we persevered, and now we're here today. And I just really, first of all, wanted to thank staff for putting this all together. It just happens, right? No, it doesn't. It takes a lot of hard work, and I wanted to thank them. But I want to thank them for being really good professionals. This is the more I get to know the folks that work here, the more I realize what more people, a lot smarter than me, that came before me, know about this organization. They stand poised, primed, and ready, I think, to be a good collaborator with our partners. So I just really wanted to say that. And I also just, wanted to thank each of you here. I think, again, it's really impressive, this group coming together and having dialogue and having differences, but really the messaging I heard was we really want to do better. And we want to, there's some specific things, and I know you're going to do your thing. I also wanted to thank our utility folks who make it their jobs, their professions, to do what they do, to deliver what is the most precious asset that we have. So not only do you have to deliver it today and tomorrow, but you also have to be thinking down the road about what's facing your organizations. And so we want to make sure, I think that was said, that we're on the same page, at least in understanding what your challenges are. We can't do a better job if we're not keenly aware of what each other's problems are. Some of them will be similar. We may be surprised, and some will may be a little bit different. But I've told Chuck, and I know that I don't need to tell Chuck anything. They know. They stand ready and to be a collaborator, to be a working partner with you all, each of our member governments. We just can't do it without you. And so I just really want us to define, I think, what the essence of partnership and leadership is all about. I want us to be that definition, and delivering, good quality product to our member governments and residents going forward. I'm just really excited about the opportunities we have ahead of us, but we won't get there without more hard work. We won't get there without thinking about the greater good here. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it really is true. If we're going to have a regional model that others, I tell you what, MPO folks are jealous of what we have here. And I've been the MPO chairman of my organization. So this regional cooperation that's here may not be perfect, but it's pretty darn good. So, and there's other economic development people. They tell me, boy, it's great. I wish we could do a little bit more like, how you guys go. Well, it didn't happen overnight. And we still don't have we still have problems, but this is a good group, and it's just awesome for our area. So I'm not going to belabor anything else. I just, again, wanted to say that I was having a conversation with a couple of utility folks in the break. We're going to finish up with the cities on February, March, and April, I think, and giving their presentations on the state of water in their communities. And in between there, the utility directors are going to kind of discuss about the next round. Once those three are done, we'll start right back into the counties again, talking about an element or two or three or four that they collectively want to talk about, each of them coming forward. And they may have individual pieces, but they're also going to have the same kind of approach as it regards whatever their issues are. I'm not going to even predetermine what that is, but clearly I think the take from here would be something about reclaimed water and their projects and that kind of thing. But they're going to be talking about that for the next round that will start February, March, April. We'll start in May. Okay, so I think the last thing is that I wanted to invite Roberta up to a microphone, wherever that is, just to give us a brief summary about where we are and what decisions we may have to make at the February meeting. And just, if so, Roberta, if you could do that. This is for the search process for the new GM.
Certainly. Good afternoon. Essentially, on January 20th, I sent out a memorandum and a draft RFP and a draft job description for the general manager position. As I had said at our previous meeting in December, it's my recommendation that we use an executive recruitment firm. What I set up was the criteria that we would use in that memo, and I also recommended that the selection committee be made up of the Chief Financial Officer, Christina Sackett, the Chief Communication Officer, Michelle Stamm, and the Chief Science and Technical Officer, Ken Hurd. In addition, I outlined what the requirements of that RFP would be in terms of that the representatives would have to meet with each of the board member, either in person or virtually, so that you all would have an adequate time to have input to the process. And finally, I would, at the February board meeting, would ask that the board delegate the authority to the chair to sign the contract that is chosen by that team. Those are my proposal in terms of how we proceed, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But if there are no objections, it's my intention to proceed next week with the advertisement for this.
Okay. Are there any questions from anybody here where we are? We'll have maybe a little more robust conversation at the board meeting, but I just wanted to see if you had anything that you wanted to share with us, or if any of you had any thoughts. Nope. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberta. Okay, and the last thing is if there's anybody else that's here, any board members who have any closing comments, I'm more than welcome to have them now, and if not, we are going to be adjourned. I'm not seeing any hands being raised. I think everybody's wanting to get out of here and get going with their day. So again, thank you very much, and everybody please stay safe, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.